The Sharks are going to be facing Mackenzie Blackwood in potentially the revengiest of revenge games we have on the guys from Locked On Avs to discuss the game, discuss the trade, and we talk a lot of Macklin Celebrini.
You're Locked On Sharks, your daily podcast on the San Jose Sharks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to Locked On Sharks, the premier hockey podcast covering your favorite team in the Bay Area. My name is JD Young, caretaker at the Reef, also the co-host of Locked On NHL's Tuesday episode with Seth. Go check it out. I do want to thank you, of course, for making Locked On Sharks your first listen, probably part of the Locked On Network. We cover your team every day. And if you want to be an everydayer, all you have to do is just follow wherever you get podcasts. And of course, you can watch on YouTube as well. And today, like I said, we have the guys from Locked On Avs on, where we talk a lot about the Mackenzie Blackwood trade, talk about what the Sharks got back, why the Avs fans are a little upset about losing Kovalenko, and then, of course, we also talk about Macklin Celebrini and give our predictions for tonight's game. So before we do all that, do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by Built Rewards. Start earning points on rent you're already paying by going to joinbuilt.com/lockedon. NHL.
Joined by JD Young over at Locked On Sharks. How you doing today, sir? If you want to throw out where people can follow you, do that right now.
Of course, I'm doing well. Excited to watch professional hockey in the Bay Area for the first time in several years. So it's nice there. But no, of course, you can follow Locked On Sharks wherever you get this podcast, and of course on YouTube as well, and Locked On Sharks on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram as well. So
all right. So a lot to get to between these two teams. Obviously, the trade went down conveniently while I was away on vacation, but Kyle talked about it plenty. I'm sure you did as well. And we figured let's do a crossover because it seems like this happens a lot when two teams make a trade. Relatively soon they play each other. So that's happening. They're playing in San Jose. It's the first game of a back-to-back for the Avalanche. So let's go back a week and start with the trade itself. And from a Sharks point of view, was Mackenzie Blackwood? It felt like he was on the market for a little while, and he was attached to the Avalanche for the past year or so. So maybe for a lot of people, it wasn't that a surprise that he did go there. But talk about the trade as a whole. Are you happy with the return that the Sharks got for the Blackwood trade?
Yeah, I think you have to be happy, at least with the second round, starting with the second round pick, right? You look at goal, kind of the historical for goalies, like they don't really get high end picks. And I know the second round pick is probably going to be closer to a third round pick because the Avs are pretty good last time I checked. But I still think for the Sharks, right? You traded for Mackenzie Blackwood for a 6th round pick. You boosted his value over 18 months, and then you turn around and got a second round pick out of him, plus Kovalenko, who we'll talk about here in a second. And I think that's pretty, especially for a guy who maybe resigns with the Sharks, maybe doesn't, because you have Askarov, who's going to be taking over at some point, whether it's this year or at least the beginning of next year is the plan. But was Blackwood, who probably can go out and at least get one more big contract or sizable contract, was he going to really resign with San Jose, knowing that I'm going to eventually lose this starter's crease because the Sharks invested a lot in trying to acquire Askarov? So I think it's pretty good business for the Sharks to sell high on Mackenzie Blackwood, who has played really well. If you look at like the save percentage and stuff like that, not that great. Again, the Sharks just became a professional hockey team again, so it's a little hard to fault for him for some of his counting stats, but had definitely over his year plus of being in San Jose kept the Sharks in way more games than they probably should have been. I mean, you can even look back to when Mackenzie Blackwood made his debut against the Avs last season, and he put up 50 saves in a 2-1 loss. Like stuff like that, just constantly happening for Mackenzie Blackwood. And I'm curious to see how he'll play behind a much better team, but is also going to be probably dealing with a much bigger workload. And I think that the Sharks did a really good job of trying to keep him healthy. And that's always kind of been his bugaboo, is he's always got this cropping up, which kind of affected his performance. But I think though for the Sharks, again, taking a 6th round pick, turning into a 2nd round pick, you gotta be pretty happy with that.
And I was curious about the trade because I know a bit Mackenzie Blackwood from his Devils days. And when you see him coming to Colorado, you mentioned Askarov coming up. Was this move because they're paving the way for Askarov? Or was did they not see a value in possibly re-signing Blackwood going forward? Was there something they just couldn't get along with or make work for the Sharks going forward? Because you mentioned they're becoming a professional hockey team now.
Yeah.
Why do you feel more confident? Because that's Georgie now in net.
I don't feel confident in Vanacek or Georgiev in net, but I think for Blackwood, I think he might have actually honestly priced himself out of what the Sharks maybe wanted to pay. And the Sharks do have $1 billion in cap space. Like that isn't a thing, but as weird as it sounds, like you're going to have to pay Celebrini at some point. You're going to have to pay William Eklund's going to be due for a contract here in a year. Like you're going to have to start paying these. And as you guys know, like you can't pay everybody. And I think for the Sharks, like it was better to kind of sell high on Blackwood for a guy who, again, in this, we see it every offseason, goalies get swapped around like crazy. Like, I mean, you guys saw in the past 10 days, you got 2 goalies swept out and 2 new ones brought in. I think for the Sharks, it was one of those things like where they were, they know they're not going to win this year, right? I mean, we all know the Sharks aren't going to be a playoff team this year. Getting what you can, and that's I think Mike Kerr has been really good at that, getting value for players, and then kind of still looking ahead. So I do believe again, Askarov is going to be the starter. I still think the Sharks really want him to kind of finish rounding out and kind of ironing out his game with the Barracuda, but with Vitek Vanacek's week-to-week injury now, which we'll get. Askarov's going to be playing, I think over the next couple of weeks, and we'll kind of go from there. I think but that's always been the plan with Askarov is let him play with the Barracuda, and then when he's ready to be an NHL player full time, that's when they'll bring him up.
You mentioned briefly, contract for Blackwood, and that they, likely price himself out. Might not be the guy going forward for the Sharks, so it made sense to make a move for him. I think a lot of Avs fans want to know, like, what is the expectation of what a contract could look like for him for this next deal for him, because Chris McFarland has said, like, and the Avalanche don't operate in the world of rentals. They don't like to do that. And even though if this were a rental, it'd be a longer rental, which is nice, but they didn't acquire him with the expectation of we're just going to use him for this year, then that's it. So yes, they are going to try to sign him, but were there numbers getting thrown around in San Jose of what a contract could look like? Not necessarily in terms of term, but more of the dollar amount.
I don't know. I know there was like initial talks, but we haven't heard of a number getting thrown around. And if I had to guess, if I was just kind of trying to pick a performance, I would look at former Shark who got traded to the Vegas Golden Knights and helped them win a cup. Adin Hill, who signed, a $4.9 million deal. Especially if you see Blackwood's number, like kind of counting stats, really, really go on the rise here when he going to Colorado. I could see something like that. Again, I don't know the term. Who knows with Mackenzie Blackwood? He's 28. He's had kind of a little bit of a roller coaster ride. Maybe he tries to cash in here. But especially if Colorado makes a deep run and he's a key piece of it, I mean, the guy's probably going to point to Adin Hill and be like, look, if my numbers are, especially if his playoff numbers are comparable to that, why not? Again, I don't know. That I'm just me trying to make an educated guess. I always say I'm an idiot with a microphone, but I would point to that. I think it's a pretty fair comp.
Does it matter that he admitted this was my favorite team when I was a kid, and Joe Sakic was my favorite player? I think the Avs might throw that in his face and be like, hey, you're playing for your favorite team when you were a kid. Cut us a deal.
Maybe, but I mean, again, like I think there's going to be, especially with goalies, if Blackwood does go on a bit of a run here in the playoffs, like, and we've seen him play really, really good hockey with the Sharks, and I expect him to continue that. If he does go on a run here and he's a big piece of it, and like there's always teams always looking for a goalie. Maybe he resigns, but you never know. I do I am curious to see what this next contract from
Yeah.
Blackwood looks like, because if it's yeah.
Go ahead. I was just gonna say it's going to be interesting because McFarland said, like, yeah, they want to sign him, but they want him to get comfortable and play the season, and then we'll talk. Maybe not right at the end of the season. Who knows when he's wanting to sign this? But you run that risk of him going on an incredible run while he's with this team, and he can turn around and say, "Look what I've done for you." While since you traded for me. And the number might go up a little bit more. And the Avalanche don't like to pay their goalies. Not to say that they wouldn't pay him, but they're not going to overpay for him. So it's a little bit of a risk to get him at this stage in the game and let him play more than half the season. And if he plays well, you got to pony up maybe a little bit more than you wanted to. What are you thinking, Kyle?
Especially when you still have not paid Mikko Rantanen and you have to sign him. So that number might, coupled with Mikko's number, might sound a little beefy.
Yeah. One more question I had on Blackwood. Obviously, he was a hot name going around in goalie circles for trades. Who else were you hearing that was kind of knocking on the doors of the Sharks? I got to think the Hurricanes were.
That was the other
else?
team. Yeah, and it's especially if you look at like how Carolina and how Colorado, where they're very much like, we're going to put our money elsewhere, and then we're going to try to go as inexpensive as possible at net. And I think for a guy like Blackwood, who is, signed at a pretty reasonable deal at, $2.35 million for their, this season, like they were the other team, and especially with all the injuries that they've had in net, I know they were the other team that was kind of looking around. I think now they're probably shifting their focus to John Gibson from the Anaheim Ducks, but I know that number. It feels like he's been on the same contract for 20 years, but like they'll somehow, he's been on the same contract for 20 years, and he still has like 5 years left on that deal at all times. I don't know how he does it, but he's good for you, John Gibson, making that deal stretch as long as possible. But yeah, I think he's the guy they're kind of looking forward to. And I think that also kind of brings up the point of like the timing of the trade, right? Because like there really isn't a lot of teams that need goaltending right now, especially those playoff caliber teams. Like everybody's pretty set right now at like they feel like they have their guy. So I think that's why. I mean, I was a little surprised at seeing the trade kind of so early in the season. But when you kind of step back and think about it for a second, it does make a ton of sense, especially as you said, for the Avalanche, who want to let him get comfortable and kind of want to see what he can do with an improved team around him and see if he can kind of be that guy that they want to invest long term in. So, but yeah, I think overall, this is one of those trades where I think both teams are going to probably walk away feeling pretty happy with their returns from the trade.
Well, you mentioned the other guy earlier in Nikolai Kovalenko. So let's get a break in, and when we come back, we'll talk about him. And of course, that jersey hanging behind you, that guy, we'll have to talk about him, and as well as this game between the two teams. What are our predictions for that? So a lot to get to still. Stick with us. We'll be right back right after this. All right, let's hear it from Prize Picks. If you love sports, you're going to love Prize Picks, the best place to turn your sports knowledge into real money. Whether it's hockey, football, or any of your favorite sports, Prize Picks makes it easy to get in on the action. And right now you can win up to 1,000 times your money on Prize Picks. Plus, this holiday season, they're giving away $30+ million in rewards during Picksmas and offering 2 free picks in December. And when your picks hit, Prize Picks makes it easy to cash out. You can get your winnings in as fast as 15 minutes. Download the app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's $50 instantly after you play a $5 lineup over at Prize Picks. Run your game. Also brought to you by Select Quote, the World Series, Super Bowl, the Olympics. The world's top athletes get to play in these top-level sporting events thanks to one thing, teamwork. And teamwork can also protect your financial legacy and your family's future. Select Quote's licensed insurance agents are the perfect teammates when shopping for customized, affordable life insurance. They can find you the right policy to keep your financial legacy safety in your family's end zone. And Select Quote is one of America's leading insurance brokers with nearly 40 years of experience helping over 2 million customers find over $700 billion in coverage since 1985. Basically, Shaggy Von Doom's bank account.
Yeah.
Right around there. So head to selectquote.com and a licensed insurance agent will call you right away with the right policy for your life and your budget. Get the right life insurance for you for less at selectquote.com/lockedonnhl. Selectquote.com/lockedonnhl today to get started. SelectQuote, they shop, you save. All right, so we'll finish up with this trade between the Sharks and the Avs, and obviously got Mackenzie Blackwood, talked about him a lot, and Nikolai Kovalenko was the big move coming out of Colorado, going to the Sharks, along with Georgiev, who we'll get to him as well.
Yeah.
But when I saw the trade, the headline was obviously Blackwood going to, and then when I expanded my on my phone, I was like, okay, what's the deal? And I saw Kovalenko, and my first reaction was like, man, that's one of those guys that you just wanted to hang on to see what his career could be.
Yep.
And then you understand it. You understand to get, you got to give. So far it seems like he's fitting in relatively nicely. So what's the expectation for him? I think guys like this going to a team like the Sharks, I mean, he was getting an opportunity with the Avalanche. So it's not like he wasn't getting that opportunity, but you think he's just going to get more of that opportunity. And what's the play for him? What's their plans for him?
Right now, he's been playing with Macklin Celebrini. So he has been on the line with Celebrini and Tyler Toffoli, and he has fit perfectly with that line and what they're trying to do. Kovalenko is like kind of aggressive forechecking. He's been very much the F1 on a lot of the forechecking and has done a lot of kind of winning those board battles and getting the puck to Celebrini. Celebrini does his magic. Next thing you know, the Sharks score. If you look at even the Sharks' first goal against the Jets on Tuesday night, Kovalenko, Celebrini both win board battles to get the puck to Tyler Toffoli, who's left all alone in front of the net. Back of the net. Tyler Toffoli doesn't miss from there. So though he has fit in perfectly, the first game was he like literally showed up right after morning skate. So I kind of give him a pass against the Canes, but since then he had a 3-assist game. That next game, like he has been a really, really nice fit for what the Sharks kind of do and how they kind of build their lines with kind of a shooter on each line, a playmaker, and then kind of that digger forechecking type of player. And he has really fit into that forechecking digger type of player for San Jose so far.
I love that for you. I really do. That's one of the things that really burn, because the Avalanche, they've had to make moves like this in the past. And before we even started recording, Justin Barron's on the move again. And that's the name that when it comes up, Avalanche fans just kind of wince a little bit. And I believe Kovalenko, with all the hype that he had going around him and what he was building this season, he's going to be that kind of player that Avalanche fans look over in San Jose and they just kind of wince because they know what he could be.
Yeah, but they won't admit it, Kyle. Like it's one of, if you remember last year,
you never do. That guy with the bump, get him out of here.
Yeah, exactly. like Kovalenko last year didn't show up until March, or was it even early April? When he showed up, because he had to finish his season in the KHL. Avalanche fans could not wait for him to the reaction was almost like he's like the savior for some reason. Like cannot wait, and I was excited for him to come here, but I think it was like maybe over exuberance for him to come here and played. This year he got a good opportunity, and I thought was doing well. I thought he had a good trajectory. I thought he was holding his own. And then when the trade came, it was like, well, Ivan Ivan's outplaying him, so he's expendable. And I'm like, come on, he's only played a handful of games. But it's kind of just, they're just making do with the trade and coming to terms with the trade. I think Avalanche fans are upset that he's gone. I do. I think in long term, if you see him pan out for the Sharks, it's going to be and Blackwood doesn't for whatever reason. You can't say who really won this thing now. I think it's really very too early to do that. But I think the Sharks got a really good player with Kovalenko. So we'll see that. Georgiev obviously is the other name. What is the plan for him? I'm already seeing, I think it was on The Athletic this morning, and they just came out with their updated trade list.
Yep.
He's on there for the Sharks.
Of course.
So what is the plan here?
I think the Sharks are in the let's try to rehabilitate him as quickly as possible and see if we can get something back for him, because he's not going to be part of the long-term plan, especially if him and Vitek Vanecek, the Sharks' other normal starting goalie, both are on the last year of their deals. And I do believe it's going to be whichever guy plays better, they're going to try to trade to a team who maybe is looking for some insurance on their backup goalie, or they have a goalie get hurt, something like that, right? And they're going to try, because the Sharks are still in the try to acquire assets mode and try to at least give yourself stuff, whether it's draft picks, prospects, either that you can utilize yourself or you can turn around and trade them for something shiny and pretty. So I do believe that's the plan. I think what they're going to do, kind of looking at Georgiev, and I know, his tenure at the Avs didn't end very well, right? Avs fans were very happy to see him leave, and I think some of them even packed his stuff and drove him to San Jose. But I do think you have to kind of look at the workload for Georgiev, right? He played a lot of games in the last 2 seasons, a lot of games, and rightfully so. He's a good goaltender. The Avalanche are trying to win games. You should rely on your top goalie to play a lot of games for you. So I think for the Sharks, they're hoping if we can maybe decrease the workload a little bit. Thomas Spears, who their goaltending coach, has kind of done a lot of wonders. Mackenzie Blackwood, Devin Cooley, and even in his short time here, have spoken very highly on how he's helped to transform his, their games. The hope is Spears can spend some time with him, a reduced workload. Maybe you kind of get a little bit of a dead cat bounce here, and then you can ship him off to somebody else for the rest of the season. So again, the Sharks are really trying to clear the path for Askarov to be, getting a good chunk of NHL games either at the end of the season or right now, as we'll talk about in a minute. But and then kind of have it so next year he is sharing the net 1A, 1B type of situation, and then eventually kind of taking that lion's share of starts for Askarov. So
okay. And let's get into the Sharks as a team, namely Macklin Celebrini. Let's bring him up. I think unfairly, and I don't really understand why. Maybe tell me if I'm wrong here. I feel like Celebrini is attached to Connor Bedard for some reason. The fact that they're number 1 picks, I get that.
Yep.
But completely different drafts, so, but for whatever reason, I get the outside impression that these two guys are just linked and compared for whatever reason. And I got to be honest, I didn't think Celebrini was I thought there's going to be a lot of growing pains for him. I thought he would get there. I kind of like what you're seeing with Bedard. I thought Celebrini would kind of go through maybe something similar. Why is it working for Celebrini, right? Why is, because he's kind of in a similar situation as Bedard, and maybe that's why we're linking these two. Yeah. But Bedard is struggling where he's at, where Celebrini, while the Sharks are what they are, he's been a
point per game player at 18. Yeah. He's a point per game player at 18. He's played 22 games. He's got a nice even 11 goals, 11 assists. Makes it easy for me to keep track of here. But
what is this? What is clicking for?
I think for people who don't watch, who have not watched Celebrini, I'm last year, one of my saving graces was watching Celebrini in college, because between watching the Sharks and watching the Barracuda, it was you need that kind of palate refresher. But watching Celebrini in college, you could see the traits were there that you thought were going to be translatable to the NHL. His speed, his physicality, and he's 6 foot, 190. He doesn't make sense for him to be as strong and as kind of on the puck and off the puck as he is. But he's been training as a professional athlete, so basically his entire life. His dad literally works for the Golden State Warriors as an athletic trainer, is their head athletic trainer. He's been hanging around NBA players his entire life. This is a guy who knows how to be a professional since, since he was a teen, he's still a teenager, but since he was 12, yeah. Basically, he's been kind of working towards this moment. But the way I kind of describe Celebrini is he's got the mentality of a third line energy guy, but the skills of a superstar, where he's just almost kind of like Nathan McKinnon. And I know I am very, very but that Nathan McKinnon, just I'm crazy and I'm just better than you, but I'm also like, I don't care. I'm going to get in the board battles. I'm going to kind of like that nastiness, that edge to him. He has a bit like that's, I think, what separates him from a guy like Connor Bedard. And like Connor Bedard's a great player. He's a very special player. Like he has like Connor Bedard's shot is just 1 in a million type of thing. But I think Celebrini's a much more well-rounded player. His ability to play in the defensive zone, again, like the Sharks trust him to play a lot of heavy minutes in the defensive zone. His ability in the neutral zone, like to transition the puck, like the kid doesn't look down at the puck, and he just that thing stays on him, like it's like as if he was just holding it. And then that shot and that skills and his ability to look off and kind of manipulate players with his vision and his ability to look one way and the puck is going the other way. But I think because of his time in college, playing that kind of more mature game, I think really helped his development. And you're seeing that stuff come to fruition. And there's still plenty of stuff like Celebrini needs to work on here and there. But I assume this is going to be your first time watching him kind of up close. Like the kids, like his game is just way more mature than a normal 18-year-old kid's game should be. It's those little detail things and how he plays without the puck and how he's not afraid to go into those board battles and he wins those board battles. He's a treat. He's a treat to watch.
Yeah, I think the big separation between Bedard and Celebrini is Bedard had the spotlight and was asked to save a franchise, and Celebrini is grow this franchise with us as we grow together. Like there's veterans in San Jose. I know a lot of Avalanche fans aren't really like looking up and down the San Jose roster, but there's some veterans. It's not the same San Jose team that that usually comes on that Anaheim back-to-back. This is a really good team, and I like the pieces that they're putting together, and I can't wait to see how it pays off. And it's got to be wonderful. Like the way you're describing him sounds like a Cale Makar like mentality, how he can get scrappy and nasty when he needs to be, but he's humble and he knows his role and kind of his team first with the skills of league first.
Yeah, no, it's very much that. Yeah, like the way he plays and the way like his interviews and everything like that, like very much a team guy, hates to lose, et cetera. But you kind of mentioned that the Sharks team, like they do have your veterans. They went out and got like a Tyler Toffoli this year, who's been a great, won the cup with LA, wanted to come to the Bay Area because his wife's from the Bay Area, like wanted to kind of help grow this thing, going out and getting a guy like Alex Wennberg, who's like a really solid middle six center, having some of those pieces. And you have guys like William Macklin, who's kind of really coming to his own. Fabian Zajdel is coming into his own along the forward line. The defense is still a work in progress right now. And they are relying on a lot of veteran guys who are probably not going to be here the next kind of year or two. But you can see like the growth and development and where this team is headed. And I think Mike Grier has done a lot in a short amount of time of kind of turning this franchise around. And I mean, you lost a lot of games last year for a reason, and you're seeing the dividends of why you lost all those games. So,
well, then let's get our last break in and let's talk about what we think is going to happen in this game tonight between the Avalanche and the Sharks. So let's get a break in, and we'll do that right after this. Let's hear from FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5. You get $150 in bonus bets if you win. And the FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on NFL all in one place. So when you get that hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That is at FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, so these two teams are facing off in San Jose. What do we think? Like, what are the things to look for in this game? It seems like the Sharks have been having a tough time holding on to leads recently, JD. So, what are we expecting here? We don't know who's going to be in net. First of all, I think Avalanche fans really want to know that answer.
Yeah,
not sure.
Yeah, not sure. Again, Vitek Vanecek, who against on Tuesday night had a puck fly up. Like he was a backup goalie. Puck fly up, hit him in the face, left the game, didn't return. They had an e-bug situation ready to go in case something happened to Georgiev. The Sharks promptly recalled Askarov this morning, who was down in Coachella Valley for the Barracuda game. So he is up. I do believe, if I had to guess, I do believe is going to be Askarov starting again, kind of going back to the Sharks formula of they really try to split the starts between their goalies because they don't want to wear down the goalies. They feel like, especially right now, when again you're trying to win it, you're not trying to, like, not every game is life or death like some other teams. So I do think they do want to try to split it. And I do think, again, you want to see Askarov, who has been playing extremely well with the Barracuda, continue to get some of these spot starts in the NHL. So that would be my guess. But I could also see the revenge Georgiev play as well. But either way, I think it'll be fun for the Sharks, at least, because Askarov is super fun to watch. He's going to give Sharks fans gray hair because of the way he likes to play the puck. But I've watched him a ton with the Barracuda. He's had a couple starts with the Sharks. You can see why he's so intriguing, just how fluid and smooth he is and how big he is and covers the net. So I do believe, if I had to guess, I think it's going to be Askarov's net on Thursday night.
Man, don't the Sharks care about a storyline? Come on now.
And see, that's
Askarov is a storyline.
And see, you guys, maybe.
That's shiny new toy. Yeah,
that's the thing that makes me physically ill, knowing what this game could be. Because going into this, of course, Avalanche fans are like, "Yay, you get to have revenge on Georgie. You get to prove everything you said about this goalie is right." When you have Nathan McKinnon, Cale Makar, and Mikko Rantanen taking shots at him, it's going to make you feel good. But then when you see Askarov possibly getting the start, then you get the sick feeling in your stomach, because who is your goaltender right now in Colorado? Mackenzie Blackwood. When did the beginning of his revitalization of his career come? In net against Colorado. And this is going to be, if Askarov gets the net against Colorado, this could be one of those beginning of the legend, because the Avalanche have they do a great job at making goalies legends. And this could be proving everything to San Jose on, see, this is where our future is going. Look at how he performed against the Avs when the Avs are still trying to find their identity as well. I hope it's Georgie for the sake of the Avalanche, but if it's Askarov, this is going to be a different ball game.
Yeah, I do like I like the way the Sharks have been playing. I kind of call them, they're a 40-minute team, right? They'll give you 20 good minutes, or 20, they'll give you 20 solid minutes. The second period's usually kind of been their best period. Well, they'll give you like really great 20 minutes. They, even like the Hurricanes, they kind of took it to the Hurricanes. They took it to the Jets in the second period. They've been really good in the second period. And then the third period, they kind of lack that killer instinct. This is something that's been kind of going around the locker room of like what good teams do, right? Is they either take a 3-2 lead to make it a 4-2 lead and kind of put a team away. They control the pace. Like they make other teams work for it. And they just don't have the horses right now. They're working to kind of learn how to win games. And this has kind of been their issues, especially the last couple games where they had a lead against, or they had a lead against the Hurricanes and they blew it in the third. They had a lead against the Blues. They were able to hang on, but the Blues made it way too close. Same thing against the Jets, right? They had a lead against the Jets, couldn't hold on in the third period. And that's, again, as a rebuilding team, you're learning how to win games here. So that's kind of what I expect. I do expect the Sharks to make the Avalanche work for this. I think this game's probably going to be a lot closer than you guys probably expected going into this. And that's the thing. A lot of people just don't realize this is not the same Sharks team that we saw last couple of years, where it has been, that's an easy W. We're going to put up 5 or 6. The Sharks might get 1. Like, okay, let's, cross off boxes, go on to the next one. Like the Sharks do make you work for it. And the amount of like blowout, terrible losses this year is, on one hand compared to what we saw last year, where they had, 4 separate losing streaks of 9+ games. Like, you're just not seeing that. There's just a much more competitive team night in, night out that just doesn't have that top end talent, or that top end talent is 18 years old. You're still trying to figure things out. So,
Right.
But yeah, I think this game's gonna be a lot closer than you probably would expect. I got like a 4-2 Sharks loss, but like, I think the Avs fans are probably going to come out of it like that was way harder than we expected.
Yeah. Well, I was looking up team stats, and I always like teams who are kind of in the situation the Sharks are in, kind of going through like the deeper stats and seeing if they're the best in something or towards the top in something.
Yeah.
And I didn't see anything that like where the Sharks just ascended to the top of anything, but they weren't at the bottom of anything. And I, I think it's improvement for them. That's kind of what you want for the, like, I think, not to go back to the whole Bedard thing, but like, I think the Sharks have like kind of jumped Chicago in this rebuild thing. And the rebuild for Chicago is just keeps getting stuck in the mud, where what the Sharks are doing, like, okay, this is like the incremental improvement that we want. So while you're not like, towards the top in a specific odd statistic or anything like that, you're not at the bottom anymore, and you're kind of hovering in that right around the I don't want to say the middle, but getting close to that. And
yeah,
like you said, like, you're starting to play hockey again, so it's good watchable hockey.
Yeah, and if you look at like, especially since Macklin Celebrini returned on November 5th, if you kind of like look at those stats and kind of throw out, he had one game against the Blues opening night and then missed the next 12 games, and the Sharks were just a hot mess without him. But since he's returned, like, this team is almost at 3 goals a game, which is right in the middle of the NHL during that same span. Like, there's still, the goals allowed per game is still like 3.5 goals, but like, this team is just a much more competitive team, kind of night in, night out. Even like their, points per game, that's 0.9 points, which is, 26. But like, again, this team last year was one of the worst teams in modern NHL history when it came to like goal differential and points per game and stuff like this. Was last year. Again, it's baby steps.
Yeah,
the team is, they're a much more competitive team, which is kind of the big goal. Is the big goals for the season was, can Celebrini do awesome stuff? So far, so good on that. And can this team just become more competitive on night in, night out basis, and not have so many of these like 7-1, 6-2 type of losses that we saw with regularity last year.
All right. And last thing I want to get to is, like, what did your coach do to get fined $25,000?
I can't say it on here without making us have to bleep stuff and do extra work. Okay. But he called the refs a certain term that you
should not.
Maybe use it to call a cat if you're an older person. So something like that. Because against Utah, where like Celebrini gets boarded in front of the ref, like he gets speared. There's just like a bunch of uncalled penalties by Utah, and then the Sharks were getting a bunch of like stick infraction calls against him. Ryan Warsowski was not very happy about that. So he called the refs a term that you would maybe call a cat if you're of a certain generation.
Because I mean, the fines in this, guys can take a baseball bat, swing to someone's head, and get fined $3,722 in the CBA, but to get $25K, you must have.
Yep.
And when it's directed towards the ref, Bettman doesn't like that stuff. So wow.
Yeah, I mean that game, like when the team's president is tweeting about the refs in that game, it was a poorly officiated a game from the all matters there. So yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Well, after the officiating I've seen this year, I kind of like your coach.
I like my coach too. I do really like my coach, Ryan Warsowski. He's a child at the age of 37. But you know what? He's won wherever he's gone, and I think he's the right guy for this team. He just, they're all kind of figuring things out together, but so far so good for the Sharks team. So
Kyle, you just riled up the hashtag Fire Bednar people with that comment you just made.
They can't. They're like Bednar and Warsowski both from the South Carolina Stingrays family. Like, they are both from that family. I have been to a Stingrays game. My family lives in Charleston. It's kind of a nice little neat, like, this little tie where all these coaches are coming from the Stingrays. So go get your coaches from there.
That's awesome. All right. Kyle, do you got a prediction? You want to throw out a prediction?
Yeah, I think it's actually going to be a little bit tighter than JD. I'm thinking it's going to be like a 3-2 with those nail biter, and everybody in subtext, I know you love these overtime games. This feels like one of those.
I don't like to throw out predictions, but for this one, I will. I'm going to give you 2 scores. One if Georgiev plays, and one if he doesn't. If he doesn't, yeah, I'll say like something 4-2. If he does, 7-2. Because he's good.
19-1.
It better be. I'll say that. It better be a 6 or 7 spot if Georgiev's in net, because the Avalanche know him. And yeah, what's that, JD?
My bonus prediction is Celebrini will do something. Like Celebrini just every game does something where you're just like, oh my god, like he gives you at least one of those like, oh my god type of plays. So
All right, looking forward to it. All right, everyone, that's going to wrap it up for today. Kyle and I will be back to discuss the Sharks game. Follow JD on his socials and Locked On Sharks as well. So, yeah, man, good luck the rest of the way. Thanks for the trade. Thanks for the goalie. Much appreciated.
And thanks for Nieto twice.
Matt Nieto.
Oh, man.
Long Beach native Matt Nieto.
Love him. Love him.
Yes.
All right, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. For Mr. Shaggy Von Doom and myself from Locked On Avalanche and JD Young over at Locked On Sharks. Thanks for tuning in and making this your first listen of the day.